Hey guys, let's get more news about Steelers, but first, don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. For teams that could steal Najee Harris away in free agency. Najee Harris has experienced one of the weirdest 4 years you could have with a team. Drafted in the first round to fix the Steelers' rushing attack in 2021, the improvements never really materialized. At first, it was the lack of an investment in the offensive line that looked like the issue, but it soon became apparent that Harris wasn't the dynamic runner he was hyped up to be. While he was a load to bring down at the second level, he rarely created on his own like the elite backs in the NFL do. He could handle a huge workload, and he stayed surprisingly healthy during his Steelers tenure, but he was never efficient. He couldn't consistently hit big runs to counteract his small gains, and he also wasn't a consistent 4 to 8 yard carry machine like we had in Le'Veon Bell. The team appeared to wise up to these issues and rejected his fifth-year option last summer, making him a free agent in 2025. Considering they weren't willing to pay him on a cheaper one-year deal, I struggled to see the reasoning that the team would extend him following another inefficient year. He seems poised for free agency. I do expect him to have a market though. We saw some top-level teams invest in big running backs, and it paid off with some instant success. I personally think a big deal for Harris would be a mistake, but the NFL is a copycat league, and I expect Harris to be viewed as the missing piece for some teams. Here are the 4 teams that could wind up signing Harris. LA Chargers. Jim Harbaugh loves to run the ball, and for a while, it looked like they would be a force to be reckoned with because of their backs. Gus Edwards was getting the tough yards while J.K. Dobbins was playing at an electric level. Injuries and regression impacted both players down the stretch though, and there is little guarantee that either will be back in Los Angeles next year. If Harbaugh wants a more dependable, albeit less explosive than Dobbins, option in the backfield, Harris could be his guy. For what it's worth, Harris can handle 20 touches a game easily and doesn't have the history of breaking down like Dobbins does. They had a surprisingly efficient passing game because of their potent ground game, and Harris could figure into a rotation there. Miami Dolphins. A sleeper team, I could see a realistic union between both sides. While Miami's offense doesn't rely on the run, Tua Tagovailoa's recent health scares as well as the seemingly impending divorce with Tyreek Hill could change things. They have an explosive runner in Devon Achane, but he has struggled with injuries and does more with less. Adding Harris would give them a dependable workhorse that can carry a big load at any given time. Add in the fact that Miami was heavily rumored to be interested in him pre-draft, and the fit makes sense. They can afford a slightly elevated contract for Harris while the rest of their backfield remains cheap. Las Vegas Raiders. This seems like such a Las Vegas thing to do. Despite having needs almost everywhere, they turn around and invest significant resources in a player that isn't worth it. With a likely rookie quarterback in the plans though, getting a capable running back to take some of the pressure off is important. The hope would be for Harris to continue serving as a bell cow back and carry the run game as he has in Pittsburgh. The Raiders tend to make poor choices like this, and I can already see this deal proving to be a disaster. Harris needs a great line to succeed, and the Raiders don't have that. If they are dead set on adding a running back though, he could be their best bet. Dallas Cowboys. Another headline that writes itself, the Cowboys failed to properly address their running back room last offseason. They saw some highs and lows with Rico Dowdle and tried to get something out of Ezekiel Elliott. They seem poised to make some moves at the position this offseason, and Harris would fit that bill. He can come in and serve as the lead back for this offense, while Dowdle can settle in as the change of pace back. That tandem could work and revitalize this putrid rushing offense. The Cowboys will be looking for some splash after a string of disappointing seasons. Harris to Dallas makes as much sense as any move this offseason. 5 for Friday, Senior Bowl begins the offseason process. The Senior Bowl practices will kick off on Tuesday in Mobile, Alabama, and are worth keeping an eye on for NFL draftniks. Last year, 10 of the players who participated at the Senior Bowl were selected in the first round of the draft, including Steelers' first-round pick Troy Fautanu. There were 35 players from the 2024 Senior Bowl selected in the second and third rounds of the draft, including center Zach Frazier and wide receiver Roman Wilson, the team's second and third round picks. By the completion of the draft, 110 players who participated in the 2024 Senior Bowl had been drafted. Included in that group was Steelers' fourth-round selection, linebacker Peyton Wilson. The Steelers' 4 selections from the Senior Bowl roster might sound like a lot, but there were 8 teams that selected 5 or more players from the 2024 game. Now, this is not to say the Steelers' first round or any of their draft picks will come from this year's Senior Bowl roster. But given how solid a group of players the Senior Bowl is scheduled to have in attendance this year, there's a good chance that 1 or 2 of the players, if not more, who are on the practice field next week will be future Steelers. For example, there were 12 quarterbacks selected in last year's draft. 8 of them were at the Senior Bowl. Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin always takes an active role at the Senior Bowl practices. That included last season when Tomlin challenged cornerback Quinyon Mitchell and Wilson at wide receiver to work one-on-one against each other as much as possible at their practices, because they were 2 of the top guys at their respective positions on the rosters. Also on Wilson's North roster were Florida's Ricky Pearsall, who ended up being selected by the 49ers in the first round, and Luke McCaffrey of Rice, a third-round pick of the Commanders. Of the Steelers' rookies who were at the Senior Bowl last season, the team knows the least at this point about Roman Wilson. He suffered an ankle injury early in training camp and missed the entire preseason. Wilson made it back, practiced for a few weeks and finally saw action in the Steelers' Week 6 win at Las Vegas, playing 5 snaps to get his feet wet. Unfortunately, the following week, he injured his hamstring during practice and landed on the reserve/injured list until having his 21-day practice window opened late in the season. Tomlin thought enough of Wilson at the Senior Bowl a year ago to want him to match up against Mitchell, who wound up being a first-round pick of the Eagles and is a finalist for NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. The 2025 season will be a very important one for Wilson, not that it won't be for the other Steelers rookies. A big jump is expected for all of the team's rookies from year 1 to year 2. You can bet that Tomlin challenged Wilson at his season-ending exit meeting with him to be that guy he identified a year ago at the Senior Bowl. Wilson accepted that challenge a year ago. The guess here is that he'll tackle this challenge as well. While the players considered the top 2 quarterbacks in this year's draft, Cam Ward of Miami, FLA, and Shedeur Sanders of Colorado, aren't going to be at the Senior Bowl next week, several of the prospects who are in the running to be selected after those 2 are going to be there. That group includes Alabama's Jalen Milroe, Will Howard of Ohio State, Jackson Dart of Mississippi, and Oregon's Dillon Gabriel. Howard, along with Notre Dame's Riley Leonard, who also is on the list to attend the Senior Bowl, just played in the national championship game last Monday night, so it will be interesting to see if he still attends. But it's a good group of quarterbacks. Beyond the quarterback position, other strong groups include the running backs, wide receivers, edge rushers, defensive tackles, and defensive backs. Cameron Skattebo of Arizona State, Devin Neal of Kansas, Oklahoma State's Ollie Gordon III, Auburn's Jarquez Hunter, and Damian Martinez of Miami, FLA, are among some of the top running backs at this year's Senior Bowl. At wide receiver, Epic Iomanor, Xavier Restrup of Miami, FLA, Savion Williams of TCU, Utah State's Jalen Royals and Jaden Higgins of Iowa State highlight a solid group. Among the defensive linemen expected to attend are Shamar Stewart and Shamar Turner of Texas A&M, Walter Nolan of Mississippi, Kentucky's Deion Walker, T.J. Sanders of South Carolina, Alfred Collins of Texas and Omar Norman-Lott of Tennessee. At edge rusher, Texas A&M's Nick Scourton, Mississippi's Princely Unknown and Jared Ivey, Landon Jackson of Arkansas, South Carolina's Kyle Kennard and Donovan Ezeruaku headline a deep and talented group. Among the defensive backs slated to participate are Trey Amos of Ole Miss, Maxwell Hairston of Kentucky, Azariah H. Thomas of Florida State, Darian Porter of Iowa State, Xavier Watts of Notre Dame and Andrew Makuba of Texas. With the quarterbacks on hand at the Senior Bowl, next week will be a critical one for the Steelers. The Steelers don't have any of their 3 quarterbacks from 2024 under contract for the 2025 season. And while that's likely to change, bringing back the entire group might be unrealistic. Pittsburgh named best landing spot for top free agent corner. If the Pittsburgh Steelers want to take another chance on a free agent cornerback, they might land on the New York Jets' DJ Reed. Pro Football Focus Mason Cameron released a list of best suitors for the top 15 defensive free agents and connected Reed and the Steelers. Reed is PFF's number 6 overall free agent and its number 1 corner. Reed enters free agency after notching his 6th straight season with an overall grade above 70.0, accomplishing the feat across 3 different franchises. In 2024, he recorded a 51.28% lockdown rate, continuing a trend of standout play that defined his time in New York, where he ranked in the 91st percentile among outside cornerbacks over 3 seasons. Our latest videos: the Pittsburgh Steelers, who rely heavily on their corners in closed coverages, the highest rate in the NFL this past season, would be a natural fit for Reed. Pairing him with rising star Joey Porter Jr. could solidify their secondary and enable the Steelers to maintain their aggressive defensive identity. And you, fan? What do you think about DJ Reed's situation? Leave your opinion in the comments.